Neural Surfer presents The Waltz of Vanishing Shadows, stories inspired by classic literature, narrated by George B. Vienna, 1897, The Waltz of Vanishing Shadows. Chapter 1. The Coffee House of Mirrors. The snow did not fall in Vienna so much as it hesitated, white indecision against a sky the color of old pewter, then slid into the gutters as if ashamed to touch the city. Inside Café Central, shame was a currency like any other. Men spent it carefully, saving their best blush for private rooms and keeping only the faintest red in public, a polite suggestion of conscience. Smoke stitched the air with slow, grey thread. Cups clinked like restrained laughter. At a corner table where the marble had been worn by elbows and arguments, Anton Reitz sat with his hands around a coffee he had already finished, as though the warmth might seep into his bones and persuade him to remain a citizen of the living. The newspaper lay open before him, Neue Freie Presse. Politics at the top, scandal lower down, a death at the bottom, and between them all the same tired ink, like the city had begun to bleed and could no longer stop. Anton did not read. He watched. He watched the chess players, their faces lit from below by gaslight and ambition. Watched a young poet scrape his last coins into a waiter's palm. Watched the mirror behind the bar, which took everything in and returned it softened, improved, forgiven. Mirrors did that. Vienna lived on them, its Ringstrasse facades, its imperial portraits, its ballroom chandeliers, 1,000 crystals insisting on eternity while the plaster underneath began to crack. Anton's reflection was a reminder the city would not improve. His hair had gone iron grey at the temples. The knot of his tie was a little loose. His eyes, once praised as steady by men who thought steadiness was the same as loyalty, had become an accusation. He could feel it in how strangers looked away too quickly, and in how the waiters addressed him with the careful neutrality reserved for men who might not pay. Former Inspector Anton Reitz, now private investigator when there was work, rent dodger when there wasn't. He had been disgraced in spring, and the disgrace had clung to him through summer like sweat that would not dry. In Vienna, one's fall was not a moment. It was an aftertaste. People savored it. The chair opposite him scraped. A shadow settled into the seat with the gravity of a man used to being obeyed. Anton lifted his eyes. The stranger wore a fine winter coat with a velvet collar, the sort of garment that did not so much protect the body as announce that the body was worth protecting. His gloves were pale, his cane black, his moustache clipped with military precision. He smelled faintly of bergamot and money. "You are Herr Reitz," the man said, not as a question. Anton did not rise. It was a small act of rebellion, and it tasted briefly sweet. "I was," Anton said. "Now I'm a rumor." The man's gaze flicked over Anton's face as though taking inventory of the damage. "Rumors can still be useful," he replied. "And you are still discreet." Discreet. Anton almost laughed. Discretion was what had ruined him. Discretion and love, and the habit of believing that loyalty could be repaid in anything other than betrayal. "And you are?" Anton asked. The man hesitated the way someone does when deciding which identity to purchase for the occasion. "Count Otto von Hohenegg," he said at last. "I am on the board of the court opera." A title, then. Not merely money, money dressed up and crowned. Anton's stomach tightened, the old reflex. Nobility carried an entire climate with it. Expectation, entitlement, consequence. "And what does the court opera want with a rumor?" Anton asked. Count Hohenegg leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice, though the café was loud enough to swallow confessions. "A singer has vanished!" Anton's fingers tightened around his empty cup. "That happens," Anton said. "Women run off. Men follow. Vienna pretends to be shocked." Count Hohenegg's expression did not change, but something sharpened behind his eyes. "This one is not merely a woman," he said. "She is an institution." Anton waited. "Fräulein Elena Markovich," the Count said, as though naming her might summon her back from wherever she had gone. "Our soprano. She has not appeared for rehearsal. She did not return to her rooms. The director fears—" He stopped, as if the words might soil his tongue. Anton spoke them for him. "That she's dead." That she's compromised, the Count corrected quickly. That there will be scandal, that patrons will withdraw, that, his hand tightened around his cane, that certain people will ask questions they should not ask. Anton leaned back. Then ask the police, he said. Count Hoheneg's nostrils flared. The police would mishandle this. Besides, your former colleagues are not inclined to assist you. Anton's disgrace had become a tool in other men's hands, even now. You want me because I'm not the police, Anton said, and because if I fail, no one loses face but mine. The Count's silence was an admission. Anton considered the man's coat, his gloves, the faint tremor at the corner of his mouth, fear dressed in velvet. And what makes you think she needs locating? Anton asked. Perhaps she simply left. Count Hoheneg looked away for the first time toward the cafe's tall windows, where snow pressed itself against the glass like an eager audience. She would not leave without a farewell, he said. Not without... Without what? Anton wanted to ask. Without money? Without a lover? Without permission? Instead, he said, when was she last seen? 2 nights ago, the Count answered. After Don Giovanni, she sang Donna Anna's aria as though she were bleeding. The house rose. Even the Emperor's cousin applauded. Anton heard the name in his head like a bell. Markovitch. He had seen her once from the back of the hall years ago, when his badge still opened doors. Her voice had been a silk noose, tightening around the room until even breathing seemed indecent. She has enemies, Count Hoheneg added softly, as though enemies were a natural consequence of beauty. Everyone has enemies in Vienna, Anton said. They just call them friends. The Count's hand moved inside his coat. For a moment Anton thought of a pistol, absurd in the Café Central, among poets and pastries, but the Count produced an envelope instead and placed it on the table with careful finality. You will be paid, he said. Half now, half when she is found. Anton did not touch the envelope. What aren't you telling me? He asked. Count Hoheneg's smile was thin and practiced. I am telling you what matters. Anton's voice was quiet. That's never the same thing. For a moment, the Count's composure cracked, revealing something raw beneath, panic or guilt. She was rumored to have a patron, he said. A powerful one. If she is missing, that patron will be embarrassed. Embarrassed men do foolish things. Foolish things like ruining careers, Anton thought, like arranging accidents, like making people vanish. Anton's gaze drifted, unbidden, to the entrance of the cafe. His mind played a familiar game. Who would come through that door? A messenger, a murderer, a memory. He told himself not to think of Klara. Of course, Vienna never cared what one told oneself. And if I refuse? Anton asked. Count Hoheneg's tone hardened. Then I will find someone else, someone less delicate, someone who might go to the police. Anton's mouth curled. And that would be disastrous. For everyone, the Count said. Anton tapped the envelope with one finger, not yet accepting it, but acknowledging its weight. Money was a kind of permission. Fine, Anton said. I'll look. Count Hoheneg exhaled, relief and fear mingling. One more thing, the Count said, as if adding a garnish to a meal that might still poison. Anton raised an eyebrow. You must be careful, the Count murmured. Because Fräulein Markovitch, she did not merely sing. Anton's chest tightened. What do you mean? The Count's eyes flicked to Anton's face, gauging whether he was worth trusting with this. I mean, Count Hoheneg said slowly, that sometimes, in her arias, she emphasized certain phrases, certain notes. A musician on our staff said it was unusual, not wrong, just deliberate. Anton felt the first honest chill since winter began. Deliberate how? He asked. Count Hoheneg swallowed. Like a message. A silence fell between them, dense as velvet. Anton stared at the envelope, at the Count's gloves, at the cafe's mirrors. Vienna loved mirrors because they made lies look like truth. But a message inside a song, an encryption threaded through art, was not merely a lie, It was a weapon disguised as beauty. "Who told you this?" Anton asked. Count Hoheneg's gaze dropped. "A man who begged not to be named." Anton almost smiled. Vienna was full of anonymous cowards. "And what do you want me to find?" Anton asked softly. "The singer or the message?" Count Hoheneg's reply was immediate, too immediate. "The singer." Anton nodded. It was an answer, and like most answers in Vienna, it was incomplete. He took the envelope. It was heavier than paper should be. When Count Hoheneg stood, he bowed slightly, less to Anton than to the idea of Anton, the function he needed. His cane tapped once against the floor, a punctuation mark. "Do not contact the opera directly," the Count said. "If you need anything, speak to my secretary. And Herr Reitz." Anton looked up. The Count hesitated. "Do not involve her." Anton's blood slowed. "Her?" Anton asked, though he already knew. Count Hoheneg's eyes were suddenly distant, as if staring, through Anton into some other room. "Baroness von Eberhardt," he said quietly. "She has taken an interest in Markovitch, and when the Baroness takes an interest—" He did not finish. Vienna did. Vienna always finished other people's sentences. Anton's fingers tightened around the envelope until the paper creased. Klara. He had not heard her name spoken aloud in months. It struck him like perfume in a corridor, sweet, suffocating, impossible to trace. Count Hoheneg left, his coat sweeping behind him like a curtain closing. Anton remained at the table, the cafe noise washing over him. He should have refused. He should have walked out into the snow, thrown the money into the gutter, and let the opera solve its own scandal. But Vienna was not a city where one could afford principles. Principles were for men with titles and wives and servants to launder their consciences. Anton rose, his chair scraping, and stepped toward the door. As he crossed the cafe, he caught sight of his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. For a moment, the glass did not soften him. It showed him plainly. A man approaching the edge of something he had promised himself never to return to. The opera, the aristocracy, Klara von Eberhardt. And beneath them all, the city's true heartbeat, 3 steps to a measure, spinning and spinning, until you could no longer tell whether the world was moving or you were. A waltz. Anton pushed the door open. Cold rushed in, sharp as a slap. Vienna waited outside, watching him with 1,000 lit windows like eyes that did not blink. Chapter 2. The dressing room and the note. The court opera sat like a jewel box on the Ringstrasse, beautiful, heavy, and faintly obscene. In daylight it looked almost reasonable, all stone and symmetry. At night it became what it truly was, a mouth swallowing crowds and spitting out applause. Anton approached from the side entrance, where the stagehands smoked and stamped their boots. The air smelled of horse manure, coal smoke, and something sweeter, flowers left too long in a warm room. A uniformed guard glanced at Anton's face, then at his coat, then at the way Anton carried himself, not noble, not servant, a man in between, the most suspicious kind. "I'm here about Fräulein Markovitch," Anton said. The guard snorted. "Aren't we all?" Anton reached into his pocket, produced a calling card he had printed when pride was still cheaper than survival. Anton Reitz, Private Inquiries. The guard read it, then spat to the side. "Back entrance," he muttered. "Speak to Herr Leitner." Anton stepped inside. The corridors behind the stage were a different world from the gilded hall. Here, glamour was stripped down to boards, ropes, and sweat. Costumes hung like empty skins. A violinist passed, humming, his eyes already elsewhere. Somewhere beyond a curtain, a soprano practiced scales, her voice bright and indifferent, as if the world were not on the verge of collapse. Herr Leitner, the stage manager, was a thin man with ink-stained fingers and the perpetual expression of someone trying to hold an avalanche in place with paperwork. He looked Anton up and down. "If you're here to borrow money," Leitner said, "join the queue." Anton kept his voice calm. "I'm here because Elena Markovitch is missing." Leitner's face tightened. "Ah," he said, "you." Anton did not react, but the word carried an entire history. Everyone in Vienna knew a man's fall. It was more entertaining than any opera. "Who sent you?" Leitner asked. "Count Hoheneg." Leitner's lips thinned. Of course. Anton leaned closer, lowering his voice. Let's not waste time, Anton said. When was she last in this building? Leitner's gaze flicked toward a corridor lined with dressing rooms. 2 nights ago, he said. After the curtain, He hesitated, as though about to say something tender, then swallowed it. She left as usual. Coat, hat, no fuss. Anyone with her? Anton asked. Leitner shook his head. No, she refused company, always refused. She said it made her throat dry. His eyes narrowed. Though there was someone waiting in the corridor earlier, a gentleman. I didn't recognize him. Anton's pulse quickened. What did he look like? Leitner made a helpless gesture. A gentleman. That's all they ever are, tall, dark coat, fine boots, as if Vienna manufactures them in a factory. Anton nodded. Vienna did. It was called inheritance. Can I see her dressing room? Anton asked. Leitner's eyes hardened. You think she left a confession in her powder box? No, Anton said. I think she left a mistake. For a moment, Leitner looked as though he might refuse on principle. Then he exhaled, defeated. Fine, he said. But if you touch anything, I'll have you thrown out. He led Anton down the corridor. As they passed a gap in the curtains, Anton caught a glimpse of the auditorium. Empty now, but still glittering in the dim light. Rows of red velvet seats like tongues waiting to taste scandal. Leitner stopped at a door with a small brass plaque. E. Markovich. He unlocked it and pushed it open. The room smelled faintly of perfume and powder and the sharp bite of spirits. Cognac, perhaps, or something medicinal. A bouquet of roses sat in a vase, petals browning at the edges. A mirror with lights framed it like a shrine. On the table lay a comb, a handkerchief, a pair of gloves. Anton stepped inside, his senses sharpening. He had stood in plenty of rooms where people had been last seen. Bedrooms, offices, alleyways. This one felt different, not because it was more elegant, but because it held the residue of performance, of someone who had been many people, and therefore perhaps none. He moved toward the table. Leitner hovered behind him like a suspicious ghost. Anton's eyes fell on a small scrap of paper tucked beneath the edge of the mirror. It was not a letter, not even a note. It was a fragment of music, sketched quickly in pencil. 5 lines, a few notes, a slur. To anyone else, it might have looked like nothing. A singer jotting down a phrase, a reminder, a whim. To Anton, it looked like a map drawn in a language he did not yet speak. He reached for it. Leitner snapped, "Don't!" Anton lifted a finger, silencing him without turning. He held the fragment closer to the light. The notes were simple, almost childlike, but there was something odd. The rhythm suggested a waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yet the melody refused to settle, skipping unexpectedly, as if stepping around an invisible obstacle. In the margin was written a single word, Schatten, shadow. Anton felt the room tilt. What is that? Leitner asked, less hostile now and more uneasy. Did she write music often? Anton asked. Leitner shrugged. She hummed, she scribbled. Every singer thinks they're a composer after midnight. Anton turned the scrap over. On the back was a smear of lipstick and faintly an indentation, like something had been pressed into the paper, then removed. He held it up to the light and saw the ghost of letters, an address, perhaps, or a name. But the imprint was too faint. Anton slid the scrap into his pocket. Leitner's eyes widened. You're stealing. I'm borrowing, Anton said, and then because his patience was thin as paper, he added, If you want it back, pray she is alive. Leitner swallowed. Anton looked around the room again, the roses, the gloves, the mirror, the perfume, the air of someone who had left in haste but not in panic. He noticed then something else. On the chair, a costume had been draped carelessly, white silk, embroidered with silver thread, Donna Anna's gown. On the bodice was a small tear, almost invisible, not a tear from wear, a tear from grabbing. Anton's fingers traced the air above it, unwilling to touch. Was she distressed that night? Anton asked. Leitner hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. She sang beautifully, he said, as if beauty were evidence of sanity. But afterward, She was pale. She said she had seen someone in the audience. Who? Anton asked. Leitner shook his head. She wouldn't say. She called him a ghost. Anton felt the word in his pocket. Schatten. Shadow. He stepped toward the mirror, scanning its edges. A hairpin lay on the floor, bent. He picked it up and held it between finger and thumb. A hairpin could bend from many things. A fall, a careless foot, a struggle. But Anton had learned in his years as inspector that small objects were often the truest witnesses. They did not lie out of fear. They did not embellish. They simply remained. Anton slipped the hairpin into his pocket as well. Leitner watched him, his voice quieter now. Do you really think you can find her? Anton did not answer immediately. He thought of the Count's gloves, of the word message, of the way Vienna swallowed people whole and then continued waltzing. I don't know, Anton said. But someone is trying to make sure she stays missing. Leitner's face tightened again. Because of politics, he whispered. Anton looked at him sharply. You think it's politics, Anton said, not a question. Leitner's eyes darted toward the corridor, as if the walls themselves listened. People have been nervous, Leitner murmured. Since the Badini ordinances, since the riots, since the Emperor confirmed that damned mayor. He swallowed. There are meetings in back rooms, men who applaud too loudly at the wrong moments, and Fräulein Markovitch. His voice lowered further. She had friends, not the kind you invite to dinner. Anton's mind raced. Tell me, Anton said, did she ever change her singing? Not her technique, her choices. The way she... He emphasized a word, the way she lingered on a note. Leitner looked away. Some said she did, he admitted. A violinist joked she was spelling secrets in the air. Anton's chest tightened. The Count had been right. Art as encryption, a beautiful crime. Anton turned toward the door. As he stepped out, the corridor seemed colder. The opera's backstage, once merely practical, now felt like the underside of a glittering lie. And somewhere beyond the stage, Vienna's elite were already planning the next performance, the next scandal, the next thing to applaud so they could pretend they were not afraid. Leitner followed him a step. Herr Reitz, he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. If you find her, tell her. Anton paused, not turning. Tell her what? Leitner's answer came after a long breath. That she was heard. Anton left the dressing room, the scrap of music burning in his pocket like a secret that had already begun to change him. Chapter 3. The Baroness in Winter. Anton had promised himself he would not go to her. He broke promises the way Vienna broke men, quietly, with style. Her townhouse stood near the Stadtpark, its facade pale and immaculate, as if scrubbed clean daily of any hint of human longing. The iron gate bore the Eberhardt crest, an eagle with outstretched wings, frozen forever in the act of claiming. The footman who answered Anton's knock looked at him with the cold precision of a man trained to recognize disgrace. Herr Reitz, the footman said, not surprised. She had been expecting him. Anton was led through rooms that smelled of wax and lilies. Paintings stared down at him with aristocratic boredom. A clock ticked like a polite threat. In the drawing room, Baroness Klara von Eberhardt stood near a window, watching the snow fall. She wore a dark green dress that clung to her as though jealous. Pearls circled her throat, a soft restraint. Her hair was pinned up in a manner that suggested discipline, but a few loose strands curled near her ear like a confession. She did not turn when Anton entered. "Leave us," she said to the footman. The door closed. Silence expanded between them. Anton stared at her back. He could not help it. His mind filled in what the dress hid, the curve of her waist, the line of her shoulder, the pale skin at the nape of her neck. He remembered the taste of that skin, salt and perfume and something darker like regret. Klara spoke without turning. "They say you've become a detective," she said, her voice still velvet, still capable of cruelty with a smile. "They say many things," Anton replied. "They also say," Klara continued, that you've become cheap. Anton felt the insult land sharp and familiar. I came because you were mentioned, Anton said. Now she turned. Her eyes, grey-green like the Danube under winter clouds, met his, and the air in the room tightened as though it too remembered. Mentioned by whom? She asked. Count Hohenegg, Anton said. He told me not to involve you. Klara laughed softly, but it was humorless. Otto is always frightened, she said. He was frightened when his mother died. He was frightened when his wife left him. He's frightened now that his opera will lose its favorite bird. Her gaze sharpened. You're here because Elena Markovich is missing. Anton nodded. Klara's expression did not show alarm, but her fingers tightened on the back of a chair. Do you know where she is? Anton asked. Klara's smile was small. If I did, would I tell you? Anton's jaw clenched. Why are you involved? He asked. Why would a baroness take an interest in an opera singer? Klara's eyes flicked over him with a slow, almost tender contempt. Vienna is built on opera singers, she said. On their voices, their scandals, their deaths. They are the city's saints and whores. We light candles for them and then ruin them. She stepped closer. Besides, Eleanor is useful. The word was a blade. Useful how? Anton asked, though he already felt the answer forming like bile. Klara's gaze held his unwavering. Her voice opens doors, she said softly. Sometimes doors that should remain closed. Anton's throat tightened. You mean she carries messages, he said. Klara's eyes widened slightly, only slightly. Anton saw it and felt triumph, bitter and brief. So it's true, Anton murmured. She was passing coded messages through her arias. Klara's lips parted as if to deny it, then closed. Careful, she said. You still speak like a policeman. Anton stepped forward until they were too close, until he could smell her perfume, amber and something floral, a scent that felt like touching velvet in the dark. And you still speak like a liar, Anton replied. Klara's eyes flashed. You came here to accuse me? She asked. I came here to find her, Anton said, and to understand why you'd want her missing. Klara's expression softened, and for a moment Anton saw the woman he had loved. Not the baroness, not the ornament of empire, but the girl beneath the pearls, hungry, restless, furious at her own gilded cage. Then the softness vanished. You think I arranged her disappearance, Klara said, because you think I arrange everything. Anton's voice dropped. Don't you? Klara's breath caught, and Anton felt the room fill with what was unspoken. The nights they had stolen, the letters burned, the promises made and broken, the scandal that had ended his career and nearly ended her marriage. His disgrace had been a neat solution, a sacrifice. He had taken it because he had believed, fool, that love could be worth more than reputation. Klara moved closer, her voice low. Tell me, Anton, she murmured. Do you still hate me? Anton swallowed. Hatred would have been simpler. I hate what you did, he said. What did I do? She whispered dangerously. I loved you. I wanted you. You let them destroy me, Anton snapped, the words tearing out of him. You stood beside your husband while he signed my dismissal. You watched me become a joke. Klara's eyes darkened. You think I had a choice? She hissed. You think I could have stood in that office and declared, yes, I slept with him. Yes, I betrayed my marriage. Yes, Her voice broke, then hardened. They would have ruined me. They would have ruined my family. They would have... She stopped, swallowing, then added quietly, he would have killed you. Anton felt his anger falter. Otto? He said. Klara's gaze flicked away. Anton remembered Baron Otto von Eberhardt as a man with polite hands and cold eyes, a man who smiled the way a knife might smile if it were bored. You're afraid of him, Anton said. Klara's laugh was brittle. Everyone is afraid of something. Anton reached into his pocket and pulled out the scrap of music. Klara's eyes narrowed. What is that? She asked. From Elena's dressing room, Anton said. She wrote Schatten on it. Klara's face tightened at the word. Anton watched her closely. Do you know what it means? Klara's fingers hovered near the paper as if tempted to touch, then pulled back. "It means shadow," she said. Anton's voice was quiet. "It means more than that." Klara's gaze lifted to meet his. "What do you want from me?" she asked, suddenly weary. "The truth," Anton said. "For once." Klara's expression shifted, something like pain flickering across it. "You want truth," she murmured. "In Vienna, Anton, truth is what we hide behind music." Her voice softened, and for a moment the room felt smaller, more intimate, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. "Elena is not missing because she is a foolish girl who ran away," Klara said. "She is missing because she knows too much." "About what?" Anton asked. Klara's gaze slid to the window where snow fell in slow spirals. "About a man who will die," she whispered. Anton's blood cooled. "A political assassination," he said, tasting the phrase like poison. Klara did not deny it. Anton stepped back, as if distance might protect him. "Is Otto involved?" Anton asked. Klara's eyes closed briefly. That was answer enough. Anton's voice roughened. "Then why come to me? Why not let me stay ruined?" Klara opened her eyes and looked at him with something dangerously close to tenderness. "Because you were always good at finding what people tried to hide," she said. "And because—" She hesitated. Her voice dropped. "Because Elena is innocent in the only way that matters." Anton felt a strange ache in his chest. "Innocent?" he echoed. Klara's lips curled in a faint, bitter smile. "She believes she can sing her way out of politics," Klara said. "She believes beauty can protect her." Her gaze locked onto Anton's. "You and she have that in common." Anton flinched. He turned toward the door. Klara's voice sharpened. "Don't be heroic." Anton paused. Klara stepped closer, her skirts whispering against the carpet like secrets. "If you pursue this," she murmured, "you will walk into rooms where you do not belong anymore. Men with power will remember you. They will not be kind." Anton's voice was cold. "They were never kind." Klara reached out and for one impossible moment touched his sleeve, light, almost accidental. It sent a shock through him that had nothing to do with temperature. "And I?" she asked softly. "What will you do if you discover I'm part of it?" Anton looked down at her hand on his sleeve, at the pearl bracelet on her wrist. Wealth as ornament, wealth as shackle. He lifted his eyes. "I don't know," he admitted. Klara's fingers tightened briefly, then released. "That's the only honest thing you've said," she whispered. Anton turned and walked out. He did not look back. He could feel her gaze on him anyway, heavy as a fur coat, warm and suffocating. Outside, the snow had thickened. The street lamps glowed like blurred suns. Carriages passed, wheels hissing through slush. Anton walked, the scrap of music in his pocket, Klara's warning in his head. Somewhere in the city, Elena Markovich was either hiding or held captive or dead. Somewhere else, a man was marked for assassination. And somewhere, in the private ballroom of Anton's memory, Klara still waited, offering him, with a single touch, the most dangerous thing in Vienna, a reason. Chapter 4. The Salon of the Talking Cure. The address Anton found was not on the scrap of music, not exactly. He had taken the paper home and held it to a candle, letting the heat coax out what the indentation might have once been. He had rubbed graphite over it, watched faint letters emerge like ghosts. A name, Bergas, a number, 19. Anton stared at it until the ink seemed to breathe. Bergas 19 belonged to a doctor, Dr. Sigmund Freud, whose name had begun circulating in Vienna like a scandal of the mind. He was spoken of with a mixture of fascination and disgust, as if he were both prophet and pornographer. Anton did not believe in prophets. He climbed the narrow staircase, the smell of boiled cabbage and damp wool rising from the building like poverty itself. At the door, he hesitated. This was not a place for men like him. Doctors were for the respectable, the rich, the desperate. Anton was merely ruined. He knocked. A woman opened the door, her eyes tired but kind. "Yes?" she asked. "I'm looking for Dr. Freud," Anton said. She studied him, then nodded. "You have an appointment?" "No," Anton admitted. The woman's mouth tightened. Anton reached into his pocket and produced a coin, not as a bribe, but as an apology for being inconvenient. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to his face. "Wait," she said, and vanished. Anton stood in the hallway, listening to muted voices behind doors, the intimate murmur of pain being translated into language. After a moment, the woman returned. "He will see you," she said, sounding surprised. Anton stepped inside. The waiting room was filled with objects that felt oddly out of place in a doctor's office. Rugs, statues, masks, artifacts from distant places, as if Freud had built himself a small empire of symbols to compensate for Vienna's refusal to take him seriously. Freud himself emerged from a side room, a man with a beard and sharp eyes, wearing a suit that was perfectly ordinary and therefore somehow provocative. He looked Anton over with the calm interest of someone examining a wound. "Herr?" Freud asked. "Reitz," Anton said. Freud's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Ah." Anton felt that small reaction, recognition, like a pinprick. "You know my name," Anton said. Freud smiled faintly. "Vienna is a small city," he replied. "Even when it pretends otherwise, come." Anton followed him into a study lined with books. Freud gestured toward a chair. Anton sat stiffly, as if expecting handcuffs. Freud took a seat opposite him, steepling his fingers. "You are not here for treatment," Freud said. Anton's mouth twitched. "Do I look like a man who believes in treatment?" Freud's smile deepened, amused. "You are here because of a woman," Freud said. Anton's breath caught. Freud's eyes gleamed. "Don't look so startled. Most men come to me because of women. They just prefer to pretend it's because of nerves." Anton forced his voice steady. "I'm here because Elena Markovich is missing." Freud's expression shifted, interest sharpening. "Ah," he said again. "The soprano." Anton frowned. "She came here?" Freud nodded slowly. "Once, twice, not for long. She did not trust easily." Anton leaned forward. "Why did she come?" Freud's gaze drifted, as if recalling her presence. "She said she was haunted," he answered. "Not in the religious sense, in the Vienna sense." His eyes returned to Anton. "She said that when she sang, there were moments when she felt guided, as if the voice that emerged from her throat belonged to someone else." Anton felt a chill. "She spoke of coded messages," Anton said quietly. Freud's eyebrows rose. Anton continued carefully. "That she was passing information through her arias." Freud did not deny it. Instead, he studied Anton. "And what do you believe?" Freud asked. Anton's jaw tightened. "I believe someone is using her." Freud nodded. "That is likely." Anton's frustration flared. "You speak as if it's obvious." Freud's voice was mild. "It is obvious when one has listened to enough people. Most of what humans do is repeat their wounds in new costumes." Anton's hands clenched on his knees. "Who else came with her?" Anton asked. Freud's gaze sharpened, and Anton could feel him measuring the ethics of revealing anything. Finally, Freud said, "Once, she came with a woman." Anton's heart hammered. "A baroness?" he asked. Freud's eyes flicked. "Yes." Anton swallowed. "Klara von Eberhardt." Freud's mouth tightened slightly. "You know her?" Anton's voice was rough. "I know her." Freud leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. "The baroness did not speak much," Freud said. "She watched. She let the singer speak as though the singer were a mirror." Anton's throat tightened. "About what?" Freud's voice lowered, almost intimate. "About fear. About the sense that she was being watched not only by the audience, but by certain men in the audience. Men who did not come for the music." Anton felt his stomach twist. Freud continued, "She said she had learned a way to hide words in song. Not in the lyrics are too obvious, but in the choices, the ornament, the breath, the stress on a syllable." His gaze held Anton's. "It is ingenious in its way, a kind of steganography. One conceals a message inside what people believe to be harmless." Anton stared. Freud's voice softened. "She thought she could control it. She thought she could make herself necessary to powerful men and therefore safe." Anton's mouth tasted bitter. And she was wrong. Freud inclined his head. Powerful men do not keep necessary women safe, he said. They keep them close. Anton forced himself to ask the question he had come for. Did she mention where she might go if she needed to disappear? Anton asked. Freud's gaze drifted again, thoughtful. She mentioned a cafe that no longer exists, Freud said. Anton frowned. A cafe? Freud nodded. Greensteidl. Anton's breath caught. Café Greensteidl had been the haunt of writers and satirists, a temple of talk, until it had been demolished earlier that year, swept away for new construction. Vienna rebuilt itself constantly, as if it could outpace decay. She said, Freud continued, that she missed it because it was a place where people vanished into conversation. She said she wished she could vanish like that. Anton felt a cold thread wrap around his spine. Did she mention anyone else? Anton asked. Freud hesitated. Then, carefully, he said, she mentioned a waltz. Anton's pocket seemed to burn. The scrap of music, the word Schatten. What kind of waltz? Anton asked. Freud's gaze sharpened. She called it the Waltz of Vanishing Shadows. The words landed in Anton like a prophecy. Freud watched Anton's face. You are frightened, Freud observed. Anton swallowed. I'm interested. Freud's smile was faint. You're frightened and you're interested are the same thing. Anton stood abruptly, needing movement, needing air. Freud did not stop him. At the door, Anton paused and turned back. Why are you telling me this? Anton asked. Freud's expression was unreadable. Because, Freud said, I do not like when people disappear without leaving a dream behind. It makes the world less interpretable. Anton almost laughed, but it died in his throat. He left Berggasse 19 and stepped into the winter air. Vienna's streets glittered with snow and gaslight. Couples hurried past with scarves pulled up, faces hidden. Somewhere a carriage bell rang, somewhere a violin cried. Anton walked toward the ruins of Café Greensteidl with the scrap of music in his pocket and Freud's words in his head. A waltz of vanishing shadows. And the certainty growing inside him like a bruise. Elena Markovich had not simply run away. She had been swallowed. And the mouth that swallowed her belonged not to the city, but to someone inside it. Someone with a name, a title, a crest. Someone like Otto von Eberhardt. Chapter 5. The Cipher in Coloratura Cafe. Greensteidl had been replaced by absence. Anton stood where it had once stood on Mikola-Platz and stared at the empty space like a missing tooth. The cafe's demolition had left behind a strange scar, an area too open, too exposed, where the city's usual habit of crowding itself with architecture had been interrupted. The winter wind swept across the square, unimpeded, like a voice suddenly allowed to speak too loudly. A few men lingered nearby, their coats pulled tight, their expressions sour. Displaced regulars, perhaps, mourning not the building, but the permission it had given them to exist. Anton approached them. One of them, thin, with ink-stained fingers and a poet's sickly pallor, looked Anton up and down. If you're looking for Greensteidl, the man said, you're too late, like everyone else. I'm looking for someone who might have looked for it, Anton replied. The man's eyes narrowed. Who? An opera singer, Anton said. Elena Markovich. At the name, the man's face changed, interest flickering, mixed with something else. Ah, he said, La Markovich, the throat of the empire. Anton's voice remained flat. Have you seen her? The man laughed softly. Seen her? We've all seen her. She sings, we suffer, we applaud, we pretend we're alive again. Anton's patience thinned. Recently. The man's gaze sharpened. Why? He asked. Anton considered lying. Then he realized, in Vienna, truth and lies were merely different costumes. The important thing was whether you wore them convincingly. She's missing, Anton said. The man's smile faded. That, he murmured, is inconvenient. Anton's pulse quickened. You know something. The man hesitated, then nodded slightly. She came here, he said, gesturing to the empty space as if the cafe was still there. Not to the building, obviously, to the memory. She stood right where you're standing and stared as though she expected the walls to rise again. His voice softened. She said she liked places that vanished. She said they were honest. Anton swallowed. Did she meet anyone? The man's gaze slid to the side. She met a musician, he admitted. A man from the opera orchestra, a violist, I think. He was nervous. He kept looking around. What was his name? Anton asked. The man shrugged. Karl. Isn't every nervous man named Karl? Anton forced a smile. Where can I find him? Anton asked. The man considered Anton for a moment, then sighed. Café Sperl, he said. He likes to pretend he's sophisticated. Anton nodded. As he turned to go, the man called after him. Herr, he said. Anton paused. The man's eyes were suddenly serious. Be careful with singers, he said. They hear too much. Anton walked away, the wind cutting through his coat. Café Sperl was warmer, darker, and filled with the scent of pastries and damp wool. Men hunched over newspapers. Women whispered behind gloved hands. A pianist played softly in the corner, the notes sinking into the room like a slow sedative. Anton scanned faces until he found a man who looked like a nervous Karl, mid-30s, thin, with hands that kept moving as if trying to escape his body. Anton approached and slid into the chair opposite him without asking. The man jerked, startled. Karl? Anton asked. The man's eyes darted. Who are you? Someone who wants to know why Elena Markovich stood in the snow staring at a demolished cafe, Anton said, and why she's missing. Karl's face went pale. Anton leaned in. Talk, he murmured, or you'll be the next one missing. Karl swallowed hard. You're Reitz, he whispered, recognition dawning. The inspector who fell, Anton finished. Yes, now talk. Karl's fingers twisted around his cup. She was afraid, he said, his voice shaking. She said she was being watched. By whom? Anton asked. Karl swallowed. By men who don't clap. Anton felt a chill. Karl continued. She told me she had been taught a method, a cipher. Anton's pulse quickened. By who? Karl's eyes flicked up, then away. A man who came to her dressing room sometimes, he whispered. A gentleman. He said he admired her artistry. He said he understood music as language. Anton's jaw clenched. Did she name him? Karl hesitated. Anton's voice hardened. Karl exhaled shakily. She called him the Baron, he whispered. Anton's hands clenched under the table. The Baron, Anton repeated, tasting the title like rust. Karl nodded rapidly. He told her she could help the Empire, Karl said. He said she could deliver information without anyone knowing. He told her it would make her untouchable. Anton's stomach turned. And did she do it? Anton asked. Karl's gaze dropped. Yes, he whispered. I heard it. Anton leaned closer. How? Karl's hands trembled as he reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. He slid it across the table. Anton opened it. Inside were musical notations, phrases from familiar arias marked with tiny symbols, circles, triangles, slashes. The markings were not standard. They were deliberate. Karl swallowed. She would change one note in a run, he whispered, or she would add a trill where there shouldn't be one. The audience thought it was improvisation, brilliance. But the markings, his voice dropped further. They correspond to letters, to numbers. Anton stared at the notebook. Who told you? Anton demanded. Karl's eyes widened. She did, he whispered. She was proud at first. Then she became terrified. He swallowed. She said the Baron was using her messages to coordinate something. Anton's breath caught. An assassination. Karl nodded, almost imperceptibly. Anton's pulse pounded. When? Anton asked. Karl's voice was barely audible. At the Imperial Ball, he whispered. Next week, at the Hofburg. Anton felt the room tilt. The Hofburg, chandeliers, waltzes, imperial laughter hiding fear. Who was the target? Anton asked. Karl shook his head. She didn't say. She said the name was in the final message. Anton's fingers tightened on the notebook. Where is she now? Anton asked. Karl's eyes filled with panic. I don't know, he whispered. She said she would disappear. She said she had to vanish before the final aria. Anton's mind raced. Did she say anything else? Anton asked. Karl hesitated, then nodded. She said, if she vanished, Karl whispered, I should give this to the man who once loved a baroness. Anton's blood went cold. Anton stared at Karl, the noise of the café fading. Klara, the empire's throat, a cipher in coloratura, a waltz of vanishing shadows. Anton closed the notebook and slipped it into his coat. Karl's eyes were wide, pleading. Herr Reitz, he whispered, if they find out I told you. Anton stood. Then don't let them find out, Anton said. He left Café Sperl with the notebook pressing against his chest like a second heart. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky hung low, exhausted. Anton walked quickly, his breath visible in the cold. He had thought this case would be about a missing woman. It was about a dying empire and the way beauty was used to smuggle knives. And somewhere inside it all, like a dangerous refrain, was Klara von Eberhardt, her touch on his sleeve, her warning, her fear. Forbidden love versus duty. Vienna had always demanded sacrifices. Anton had already given his career. He had the terrible sense it would not be enough. Chapter 6. Zentralfriedhof. Vienna's dead were better housed than its poor. Zentralfriedhof lay at the edge of the city like a vast, manicured secret. Snow dusted the gravestones, softening names into whispers. The iron gates loomed, and beyond them the city's famous rested under marble angels, while the unknown sank into earth without ornament. Anton came at dusk, the light thinning into blue. Karl's notebook had contained, among its markings, a sequence of letters Anton could not ignore, ZF11. At first he had thought it might be a musical instruction. Then he realized, Zentralfriedhof, Section 11. He walked past rows of graves, breath clouding, boots crunching on frozen gravel. The air smelled of damp stone and cold earth. Section 11 held modest graves, less theatrical than the famous composers' monuments. Anton moved slowly, scanning. A figure stood near a small chapel, tall, coat dark, hat pulled low. Anton's hand drifted toward his pocket, where he carried a small revolver he had kept from his police days. Not officially. Nothing about his life was official anymore. He approached cautiously. Fräulein Markovich, he called softly. The figure did not turn. Anton took another step. A second figure emerged from behind a tree, then a third. Anton's pulse spiked. They moved with purpose, not mourners but hunters. Anton's mind flashed. Trap. He turned sharply, intending to retreat. A hand grabbed his arm from behind. Anton spun, yanking free, but the grip was strong. A man in a dark coat, face half hidden, hissed, Herr Reitz! Anton's heart slammed. Who are you? Anton demanded. The man leaned closer, his breath smelling of tobacco and something metallic. A friend, the man whispered. If you don't make yourself an enemy. Anton's gaze flicked to the other men approaching. You lured me here, Anton snapped. The man's eyes narrowed. No, he said, voice low. You followed the wrong music. Anton's blood chilled. The man's hand tightened again, not quite restraining, but warning. You are looking for the singer, he murmured. Stop. Anton's jaw clenched. Where is she? The man's eyes flicked away. Anton saw it. Fear. You don't know, Anton realized. The man's mouth tightened. The approaching men drew closer. Anton could see their faces now, hard, familiar in the way men who serve power become interchangeable, men like Otto's men. Anton's mind raced, calculating distance, movement, escape. The first approaching man called out, Herr Reitz, you're needed for questioning. Anton almost laughed at the absurdity. Needed, as if his cooperation mattered. He met the stranger's gaze. If you're a friend, Anton said quietly, prove it. The stranger hesitated, then shoved Anton suddenly hard, not toward the approaching men, but sideways behind a row of graves. Run! The stranger hissed. Anton didn't wait. He sprinted, boots slipping on snow, weaving between tombstones. Behind him, shouts erupted, boots pounding. He vaulted a low stone barrier, slipped behind a monument, then darted left toward a narrow path lined with bare trees. A gunshot cracked the air. Stone splintered near Anton's head. He ducked, breath burning. Another shot. Anton turned sharply down a path leading toward the service gate. He could hear them behind him, closer now. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his revolver and fired once, not to hit, but to make them hesitate. The men shouted, ducking. Anton ran, his lungs burned, his heart pounding like a drum in a ballroom. He reached the service gate and shoved it open, stumbling into a narrow alley behind the cemetery walls. He kept running until the sounds of pursuit faded. Finally, he leaned against a brick wall, panting, his breath a cloud. His hands trembled, not from cold, but from the realization settling into him like poison. Someone was watching him. Someone powerful enough to send men to a cemetery at dusk. Someone who wanted this story to vanish before it reached the Hofburg. Anton looked up at the sky where night had begun to swallow the city. In his pocket, Karl's notebook pressed against his chest. In his mind, Klara's voice echoed, "Don't be heroic." Anton laughed softly, bitterly, alone in the alley. He wasn't heroic. He was simply too far in to turn back. Chapter 7. The Attic of the Secessionist. Anton did not go home. Home was where one went to be found. Instead, he went to the only place in Vienna where a man without a badge could still ask questions without being laughed out. The places where art pretended to be rebellion. The secessionists had begun making noise that year, painters and sculptors who claimed they wanted to break free from the empire's aesthetic, as if beauty could be a form of revolution. Their exhibitions scandalized the polite. Their parties scandalized everyone. Anton followed a name from the edge of Karl's notebook. Moser. Otto Moser, a painter rumored to be friendly with opera singers and political dreamers alike. Anton found him in a studio near the Naschmarkt, a building that smelled of turpentine and cheap wine. He climbed stairs slick with paint and knocked. The door opened to reveal a man with paint on his hands and suspicion on his face. "What?" the man snapped. Anton showed his card. Otto Moser's gaze flicked over it, then over Anton's face. "You're not police," Moser said, sounding almost disappointed. "No," Anton replied. "I'm worse. I'm desperate." Moser's mouth twitched, amused. "What do you want?" he asked. Anton's voice was quiet. "Elena Markovich." Moser's amusement vanished. He started to close the door. Anton shoved his boot into the gap. Moser glared. "Get out," he hissed. Anton leaned in. "She's in danger," he said, "and so is whoever is hiding her." Moser's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm hiding her?" Anton watched him closely. Moser's gaze flicked involuntary toward the stairwell. Anton's pulse quickened. He pushed past Moser and stepped inside. The studio was cluttered with canvases, women with gold halos, men with hollow eyes, bodies tangled in symbolic embraces. Art that wanted to be honest and therefore became obscene. Anton moved toward a narrow door at the back. Moser grabbed his arm. "Don't," Moser warned, voice tight. Anton's gaze snapped to his. "She's here," Anton said. Moser's jaw clenched. Anton's voice softened, almost pleading. "Let me see her." Moser hesitated, then released Anton's arm. "Upstairs," he muttered. "But if you bring trouble—" Anton was already moving. The attic stairs creaked under his weight. The air grew colder, thinner. The smell of turpentine faded, replaced by something else. Perfume. Faint, familiar. At the top, Anton found a small room lit by a single candle. A woman sat on a narrow bed, wrapped in a coat too big for her. Her hair, usually glossy on stage, was loose and tangled. Her face was pale, eyes wide and fever-bright. Even in fear, she was unmistakable. Elena Markovich. Anton stopped, suddenly unsure of his own breath. Elena's gaze locked onto him. For a moment, she looked like a trapped animal. Then recognition flickered. "You," she whispered. "The inspector. Former," Anton said quietly. Elena's laugh was brittle. "Vienna destroys everything eventually," she murmured. Her voice even now had that uncanny resonance, as if the air itself wanted to carry it farther. Anton stepped closer, slowly. "I'm here to help," he said. Elena's eyes narrowed. "Men always say that." Anton swallowed. "Count Hohenegg hired me." Elena's expression twisted. "That frightened little man?" she whispered. "He wants his opera back. He doesn't want me." Her gaze sharpened. "Why are you really here?" Anton hesitated, then pulled Karl's notebook from his coat. Elena stared at it. Her face drained of color. "You heard," she whispered. "I know," Anton said. "About the cipher, about the messages." Elena's hands tightened on the coat around her. Anton's voice lowered. "And I know about the ball." Elena's eyes flicked to Moser, who stood in the doorway, tense. "Eleanor," Moser murmured, warning. Elena swallowed, her throat bobbing. "You don't understand," she whispered, voice trembling. "It started as flattery. He told me my voice was a weapon. He told me I could—" "Help the Empire," Anton said, bitter. Elena's gaze snapped to him, startled by the anger in his tone. "Yes," she whispered. "And I believed him." Her voice cracked. "Because I wanted to believe that art could matter more than politics. That beauty could—" She stopped, swallowing. "He taught me the method. He said I only needed to change the ornaments. A trill for a vowel, a mordant for a consonant, a held note for a number." She laughed softly, horrified. It was like learning a new language in my own throat. Anton's stomach turned. "Who is he?" Anton asked, though he already felt the answer. Eleanor's eyes slid away. Moser's voice tightened. "Don't say it." Eleanor's gaze returned to Anton, and in her eyes Anton saw something like resignation. "Baron Otto von Eberhardt," she whispered. Anton felt the name land like a blow. In the candlelight, Elena's face looked almost translucent. "He came to my dressing room," she murmured. "He said the baroness admired me. He said she wanted me to be safe." Her eyes flicked to Anton, sharp. "Do you know her?" Anton's throat tightened. "Yes," he said. Elena watched his face closely, as if reading a hidden message in his expression. "She loves you," Elena said suddenly, softly. Anton's breath caught. Moser shifted uneasily. Anton's voice was rough. "What makes you think that?" Elena's smile was faint, sad. "Because she looks at you the way I look at the stage," Elena murmured. "Like it's the only place she feels real." Her gaze hardened. "And because she used that love to bring you back into this." Anton's blood went cold. "You think she hired me?" Anton asked. Elena shook her head. "Not directly," she whispered. "But she wanted you involved. Because you're the only man in Vienna who might still pretend duty is more powerful than desire." Anton flinched. Elena leaned forward, her voice dropping. "They are going to kill someone at the ball," she whispered. "I don't know if it's a minister or a prince or simply a man who stands in the wrong place. I only know that my final aria is meant to tell them when, where, who." Anton's mind raced. "And if you don't sing it?" he demanded. Eleanor's laugh was hollow. "Then they will kill me instead," she whispered. "Or they will kill Otto Moser. Or they will kill the baroness. Or they will kill you." Her eyes burned. "They have already chosen blood. The only question is whose." Anton felt a terrible pressure in his chest. "Then we stop it," Anton said. Elena's gaze held his, skeptical, desperate. "How?" she whispered. "You're not police anymore. You're a ghost." Anton's jaw clenched. "Ghosts can still haunt," he said. Eleanor stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached under the coat and pulled out a folded sheet of music. Pages, not scraps. The full aria, marked with tiny symbols in the margins like Karl's notebook, but more detailed, more intimate. "The cipher," she whispered. "Everything. If you can read it, you can know what they plan." Anton took the pages carefully, as if they might cut him. Elena's fingers lingered on the paper for a moment longer than necessary, and Anton felt the tremor in her hand. She looked up at him. "Promise me," she whispered, voice breaking, "that if I die it won't be for nothing." Anton swallowed hard. "I promise," he said. Behind him, Moser exhaled shakily. Outside the attic window, Vienna's lights glittered in the snow, indifferent and beautiful. Anton stared at the marked sheet music. at the symbols that turned art into weapon. He thought of Klara's pearls, her fear, her warning, forbidden love versus duty. The Empire had turned a woman's voice into a code. Now it would demand a man's soul as payment. Chapter 8. The Imperial Ball. The Hofburg in winter was a dream someone else paid for. Carriages lined the streets like glossy black beetles. Guards in polished helmets stood rigid, their breath visible in the cold. Inside, chandeliers blazed, multiplying light until it seemed impossible that darkness could exist anywhere in the world. The ball was a ritual of denial, a city dancing on the edge of its own collapse, insisting through music and silk that it was eternal. Anton entered through a service corridor not because he belonged, but because he could still move in spaces meant for the unseen. His coat was plain. His gloves were worn. In a ballroom he would stand out like a stain. He did not intend to enter the ballroom. He intended to stop a death. The marked sheet music lay folded in his inner pocket. He had spent the day decoding it, his mind bent over the symbols like a priest over scripture. Eleanor's system was ingenious. Each ornament corresponded to a letter by phonetic. Association, each held note to a number. The message embedded in the aria, once extracted, formed a sentence like a whispered confession. Midnight, Mirror Hall, Gauch, 3 steps, midnight, Mirror Hall, Gauch. Paul Gauch von Frankenthurn, the minister-president, newly appointed after Badeni's fall. A man caught in the Empire's political storms like a leaf in a gutter. If he died tonight, Vienna would erupt. The German nationalists would blame the Slavs. The Slavs would blame the Germans. The Emperor would tighten his grip. The secret police would expand. Men like Otto von Eberhardt would thrive. Anton's stomach turned. He moved through corridors, past servants and musicians and soldiers. The air smelled of wax and perfume and sweat. Somewhere a waltz began. Strauss, of course, its rhythm pressing against Anton's ribs like a second heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Anton reached the edge of the mirror hall and paused. The hall was a glittering corridor lined with tall mirrors, each reflecting chandeliers, each multiplying bodies until it was impossible to tell who was real and who was merely repetition. Couples drifted through, laughing softly. Officials in uniform spoke in clusters. Women in gowns like crushed jewels smiled with practiced exhaustion. At the far end, Anton saw him. Gauch stood near a marble column, surrounded by men who looked relaxed in the way only the powerful can. His face was pale, his eyes tired. A man who did not want this job, but had been given it anyway, like a punishment disguised as honor. Anton scanned the hall, searching for threat. Men in coats, men with hands too still, men who watched too carefully. His gaze caught on a figure near a mirror, tall, elegant, unmistakable even in a crowd. Baron Otto von Eberhardt. Otto's expression was calm, almost bored. He held a glass of champagne as if it were a prop. He spoke to a man Anton did not recognize, leaning in slightly, whispering. Anton's blood chilled. Then Anton saw her, Klara. She stood a few steps behind Otto, her hand resting lightly on his arm as though she were the perfect wife. Her dress was black and silver, the colors of the night. Diamonds glittered at her throat like frozen tears. Her eyes moved through the hall, and when they found Anton, standing in the shadows half hidden by a pillar, something flickered in her face. Recognition. Fear. And beneath it, something like longing, quick and dangerous. Anton's chest tightened. He wanted to go to her, to take her hand, to pull her away from Otto's cold orbit, to tell her he still remembered the warmth of her skin in the dark. Duty held him in place like a chain. He looked away. A hush moved through the hall like a wave. At the far end, musicians began to assemble. Anton's pulse spiked. Eleanor. He scanned, then saw her, stepping into view. She wore a white gown that made her look like a ghost among the glittering crowd. Her face was pale, her eyes dark. She moved with the controlled grace of someone who has learned to hide fear beneath posture. Anton's heart clenched. She had been brought here, forced. Eleanor's gaze swept the hall, and when it found Anton, her eyes widened slightly, a silent plea. Anton's hand tightened around the revolver in his pocket. Otto turned toward Eleanor, his expression softening into something like admiration. He leaned in, murmuring to her. Eleanor's face did not change, but Anton saw her swallow, saw the tiny tremor at her throat. The musicians lifted their instruments. The conductor raised his baton. Eleanor began to sing. Her voice cut through the hall like a knife through silk. It was beautiful, unbearable. Each note shimmered, each phrase shaped with precision. The hall fell silent except for the sound of her voice and the soft rustle of gowns. Anton listened not as an admirer, but as a man reading a code in real time. He watched her mouth, her breath, her ornaments, a trill, a held note, a slight emphasis on a consonant. Letters formed in Anton's mind like blood seeping through cloth. Now. Anton's pulse slammed. Elena's eyes flicked almost imperceptibly toward the mirrors. Anton followed her glance. 3 men had moved closer to Gouch. Their hands were not empty. One held a folded program, too thick. Another held a cane, its tip metallic, heavier than it should be. The third's hand was inside his coat. Anton's blood roared in his ears. The Waltz of Vanishing Shadows had reached its final turn. Anton moved. He stepped into the hall, cutting through the crowd with purpose. A woman gasped as he brushed past. A man frowned, offended at being treated like furniture. Anton reached for the first man, the one with the folded program, and slammed his shoulder into him hard. The program fell, splitting open. Inside, a pistol, small and elegant. The man's eyes widened, rage flaring. Anton grabbed his wrist and twisted. The pistol clattered to the marble floor. Shouts erupted. The second man, cane, lunged toward Gouch. Anton threw himself forward, catching the cane mid-swing. The cane snapped open like a hidden blade. Inside was not a sword, but a thin spike, gleaming. A stiletto. Anton wrenched it away, feeling the edge slice his glove. The man snarled, striking Anton in the face with his free hand. Anton stumbled, tasting blood. The third man pulled a gun from his coat. Anton turned and saw Klara moving. She stepped between the man and Gouch with impossible speed, her body a shield in silk. Her hand flashed up. A small pistol appeared, one Anton had never seen on her before. Klara fired. The sound was sharp, obscene in the mirrored hall. The man jerked backward, collapsing against a mirror which cracked like ice. The crowd screamed, music stopped. Elena's voice faltered, then surged again, not in song now, but in a cry. "Anton!" Anton's mind struggled to keep up. Klara stood over the fallen man, her face pale, her eyes wide. Otto's expression had changed, no longer bored, now furious. He grabbed Klara's arm. "What have you done?" he hissed, voice like a whip. Klara turned toward him, her eyes blazing. "What you taught me," she said, voice low. "How to hide a weapon in beauty." Otto's face contorted. Anton lunged, grabbing Otto's shoulder and yanking him back. Otto spun, eyes cold, recognizing Anton fully. "Well," Otto murmured, almost amused, "the rumor returns." Anton's fist slammed into Otto's jaw. Otto staggered, shock flickering. Klara stared at Anton, breathless. For a second, the mirrored hall held only them, the forbidden love, the duty, the rot beneath the Empire's glitter. Then guards surged in, uniforms, shouts, hands grabbing. Anton felt himself seized, pulled back. Otto straightened, smoothing his coat, blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes met Anton's, and Anton saw something like satisfaction. "You've always been dramatic," Otto said softly. Klara's gaze snapped to Otto, hatred and fear tangled. "Elena," Klara whispered suddenly, turning toward the singer. Elena stood frozen, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. Klara stepped toward her. Otto grabbed Klara again hard. Klara hissed in pain. Anton strained against the guards. "Let her go!" Anton shouted. A guard struck Anton in the stomach with the butt of his rifle. Anton doubled over, gasping. Through the blur, he saw Klara's eyes meet his. In them was a question, fierce and desperate. Choose, duty or love. Anton forced himself upright. He saw Gouch being escorted away, pale and shaken. He saw the assassins being dragged, cursing. He saw Eleanor standing alone, her voice stolen. And he saw Klara, held by Otto, trapped. Anton's mind snapped into clarity. He did not have the luxury of choosing only one. He wrenched free, elbowing the guard, and lunged toward Klara. The hall spun with mirrors and panic. Otto raised his pistol. Anton moved between Otto and Klara without thinking. A shot cracked. Pain blossomed in Anton's shoulder like fire. He staggered but stayed standing. Klara screamed his name. Anton grabbed Otto's wrist, twisting. Otto snarled, and for the first time his composure fractured into raw animal fury. "You should have stayed ruined," Otto hissed. Anton's voice was harsh. "I tried!" He slammed Otto into the mirror. Glass shattered, reflecting Otto's face in 100 broken fragments. Otto gasped. Klara stepped forward, pistol still in her hand, trembling. Otto looked at her, disbelief twisting his features. "You," he whispered. "You would betray me for him?" Klara's voice was low, shaking. "I betrayed you the moment I married you," she whispered. "I just didn't know it yet." Otto's laugh was strangled. "You think he'll save you?" Otto sneered. "He couldn't even save his own badge." Klara's eyes filled with tears, but her hand did not lower. Anton's vision blurred from pain. Guards shouted, closing in. Everything moved too fast and too slow at once, like a waltz spinning out of control. Klara looked at Anton, her gaze fierce. "Go," she whispered. "Take Eleanor, get her out." Anton's breath caught. "What?" he rasped. Klara's voice hardened. "If you stay, he will destroy you again," she whispered. "And this time he'll do it properly." Her eyes flicked to the guards. "They will believe him. They always believe him." Anton's chest ached. He wanted to refuse, to take her hand and run, to break the Empire's rules and call it love. But duty to Eleanor, duty to the truth, duty to the fragile chance of stopping another death pulled at him. Klara's gaze softened for a heartbeat. "Anton," she whispered, and his name sounded like a confession. "I loved you. I still—" Otto snarled, yanking her arm. Klara's grip tightened on the pistol. Anton saw her decision in the way her jaw set. She turned the pistol, not toward Otto, but toward herself. No, toward the chandelier's chain. She fired. The chain snapped. The chandelier fell. Light and crystal crashed down between Otto and the guards, between Klara and the world, a sudden storm of glittering violence. The hall erupted in screams again. Anton staggered backward, shielding his face. In the chaos, Klara grabbed Elena's wrist and shoved her toward Anton. "Go!" Klara screamed over the noise. Anton caught Eleanor, her body trembling. He looked for Klara through the falling crystal and smoke. For a moment he saw her silhouette, standing tall, hair loosened, pearls gone, her face fierce as an angel who had decided to burn the church down. Then the guards surged, swallowing her. Anton's throat tightened. Eleanor sobbed, clinging to him. Anton turned and ran. He ran through corridors, through servants' passages, through the Hofburg's underbelly, carrying Eleanor's fragile body like stolen treasure. Behind him, Vienna's ballroom roared with panic, and somewhere inside it, Klara von Eberhardt vanished into the Empire's grip like a shadow swallowed by light. Chapter 9. The Waltz of Vanishing Shadows. They hid Eleanor in a carriage meant for linens. Anton bribed a kitchen servant with blood on his sleeve and desperation in his eyes. The servant did not ask questions. In Vienna, questions were expensive. The carriage rattled through back streets, away from the Hofburg's glittering scandal. Elena sat hunched beside Anton, shaking, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Anton pressed a cloth to his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his own blood seep through. Elena's voice was a whisper now. "She saved me," she murmured. Anton stared at the dark window, at Vienna's lights blurring past. "Yes," he said. Elena swallowed. "Why?" Anton's jaw tightened. Because Klara had once been a girl who wanted to believe beauty could protect her, he thought. Because she had seen herself in Elena. Because she could not save Anton's badge, but she could save his soul by forcing him to choose duty over her. Anton's voice was rough. "Because she's not as cruel as people think," he said. Elena's laugh was soft and broken. "In Vienna," she whispered, "cruelty is just another kind of etiquette." Anton closed his eyes briefly, pain pulsing through him. When he opened them, he realized something sharp and terrible. Otto would not forgive this, and Vienna would not let Klara's rebellion stand without punishment. They reached Moser's building before dawn. Moser opened the door, eyes wide at Anton's blood. "Jesus," he muttered. "What happened?" "A chandelier," Anton said, voice flat. "And an empire." Moser ushered them inside. In the studio, Eleanor collapsed onto a chair, sobbing quietly. Anton swayed, dizziness washing over him. Moser grabbed his arm. "Sit," he ordered. Anton sat, breathing hard. Moser pressed a bottle into Anton's hand. "Drink," he said. Anton drank. The liquor burned, grounding him. Eleanor lifted her head, eyes red. "They'll come for me," she whispered. Anton's voice was grim. "Yes," he said, "and they'll come for Moser." Moser cursed softly. Anton reached into his coat and pulled out Eleanor's marked sheet music. "This is your life," Anton said to Eleanor, holding it up. "And it's also Otto's." Eleanor's gaze fixed on it, fear flickering. Anton's eyes hardened. "We need to put this somewhere Otto can't reach." Eleanor swallowed. "The newspapers," she whispered. Anton nodded slowly. Vienna's press could be bought, but scandal was a beast that sometimes bit its owner. Anton looked at Moser. "You know journalists," Anton said. Moser grimaced. "I know men who pretend they're journalists," he said. "But yes," Anton's mind raced. "We need one who hates Otto enough to print it," he said. Moser's gaze drifted, thoughtful. "There is a man," Moser said slowly. "A satirist. He lost a brother in the police raids during the riots." His eyes sharpened. "He hates the ministry. He hates Otto. He hates everything." Anton almost smiled. "Perfect," he murmured. Elena's voice trembled. "And Klara?" she whispered. Anton's smile vanished. He stared at his blood-stained glove. He could still see Klara's silhouette behind the fallen chandelier, fierce and doomed. "I don't know," Anton admitted. The words tasted like failure. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears again. "She will be punished," Elena whispered. Anton's jaw clenched. "Yes," he said. He wanted to say something comforting, that love would save her, that duty would redeem him, that Vienna could not swallow them all. But Vienna was very good at swallowing. Anton stood swaying slightly and forced himself toward the door. Moser grabbed him. "Where are you going?" he demanded. Anton's voice was low. "To the only place I can still do something," he said. "Which is?" Moser snapped. Anton looked back at Eleanor. "To the baroness," he said. Chapter 10. Coda, a letter, a dream. Klara's townhouse was dark when Anton arrived. No footman answered. No lamps glowed. Snow had gathered on the steps, untouched. Anton's heart sank. He pounded on the door. Nothing. He tried the handle. Locked. Anton's shoulder throbbed as he leaned against the cold stone, breathing hard. A carriage rolled past, slow as if hesitant. It stopped. A window lowered. A familiar face looked out. Count Hohenegg, pale as paper. Anton's pulse spiked. "You!" Anton said, voice raw. Count Hohenegg's eyes were wide with fear. "Get in!" the Count whispered. Anton hesitated only a moment, then climbed into the carriage. Inside it smelled of leather and panic. Count Hohenegg clasped his hands tightly. "They've taken her!" he whispered. Anton's throat tightened. "Klara?" he rasped. The Count nodded. "And Eleanor?" the Count asked anxiously. Anton's eyes narrowed. "Safe," he said. "For now." Count Hohenegg exhaled shakily. "They're saying the assassination attempt was anarchists," the Count murmured. "They're already printing it." "Otto," he swallowed. "Otto is telling everyone he heroically prevented worse bloodshed." Anton's hands clenched. Count Hohenegg's voice dropped further. "Klara, she left something for you," he whispered. Anton's breath caught. "What?" The Count reached into his coat and produced an envelope, thick, sealed with wax. The seal bore the Eberhardt crest, but the wax was cracked as if pressed in haste. Anton took it with trembling hands. He broke the seal. Inside was a letter in Klara's handwriting, sharp, elegant, furious. Anton read by the dim carriage light. "Anton, Vienna will tell you I'm a monster or a martyr. Do not believe either. I have done what I could with the tools I was given, pearls, lies, and a husband who thinks power is proof of virtue. You will be tempted to rescue me. You will imagine love as a rope. Anton, love is not a rope in Vienna. It is a noose. Save Elena. Print the truth. Let the city choke on its own scandal. If you do this, you will have repaid the debt I could never repay when they ruined you. As for me, do not mourn me as though I am dead. I have been dead in ballrooms for years. Remember me only once when you hear a waltz and cannot tell whether it is beautiful or terrible. That is where I live. K. Anton's vision blurred. He clenched the letter so tightly it crumpled. Count Hohenegg watched him uneasy. "Where is she?" Anton demanded. Count Hohenegg swallowed. "They took her to a country estate," he whispered. "Outside the city. Her husband's family." Anton's voice was cold. "Otto is alive," he said. The Count nodded miserably. Anton closed his eyes, pain and fury surging. He could storm an estate. He could try to drag Klara out like a hero in a cheap novel, and she would die for it, or he would, or Elena would. Klara was right. Vienna did not allow rescues. It allowed sacrifices. Anton opened his eyes. "We'll do what she said," Anton murmured. Count Hohenegg blinked. "What?" Anton's voice hardened. "We print the truth," he said. "We use Elena's cipher. We expose Otto." He looked at the Count, eyes sharp. "You wanted your singer back. You'll get her. On a page, in scandal, in blood. Is that what you want?" Count Hohenegg's face went pale. He whispered, "He will destroy the opera." Anton's laugh was bitter. "He's destroying the city," Anton said. The Count stared at Anton, trembling. Finally, he nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "Do it." They published it 2 days later. Not everything. Vienna never got everything. The paper blurred names, softened accusations, framed it as rumor and concern, the way truth had to be dressed to enter polite society. But enough. Enough that men whispered at cafés. Enough that women smiled behind fans. Enough that officials shouted behind closed doors. Enough that Otto von Eberhardt's smile began to look strained. Elena disappeared from the city quietly after that, her voice swallowed into exile rather than death. One day, Anton heard she was singing in Paris. Another day, someone said London. Vienna did not like to keep women who knew too much. As for Klara, Anton never saw her again. Sometimes he received a note with no signature, a single line written in that sharp hand, "Still alive," or "Still dancing." Once, months later, he received a scrap of music marked with a word in the margin, "Schatten, shadow." Anton kept each note, each fragment, like relics of a faith he did not quite believe in. His shoulder healed into a scar that pulled when winter came, a reminder that duty had teeth. Vienna kept waltzing. It always did. And sometimes, late at night, when Anton lay half asleep and the city's distant music drifted through the window, he dreamed of the mirror hall, of chandeliers falling like stars, of Klara's eyes burning with fierce love, of Elena's voice turning into code. In the dream, Anton and Klara danced. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Their hands did not touch. Their bodies spun past each other like planets in doomed orbit. And as they turned, the mirrors around them began to empty, reflections vanishing one by one until only shadows remained, waltzing in a hall too beautiful to be true, too decadent to survive. Anton would wake with his heart pounding, tasting snow and perfume and regret. In the morning, Vienna would be there as always. Coffee, newspapers, gossip, opera posters, and the faint scent of something rotting beneath the flowers. He would put on his coat. He would go to his little office above the tailor. He would take cases from men who wanted secrets found and women returned. And sometimes when a client asked him why he still did this work, why he still hunted truth in a city that dressed lies in silk, Anton would think of Klara's letter, of Elena's trembling hand on the sheet music, of the way a voice could hide a knife. He would answer quietly, "Because the shadows don't vanish on their own." And somewhere in the distance, Vienna's waltz would begin again. This has been a Neural Surfer presentation.
The chandeliers flicker their ghostly light. Marble halls echo whispers of the night. step soft on the polished stone, dancing shadows, but I'm alone.
Shadows spin in the waltz of despair. Fade, shadows fade, dissolve in the air. Where are you now? Where do you go? In the waltz of vanishing shadows.
A clock strikes 12, its chime so cold. Time melts like wax, the night turns old. Phantom faces peer through the glass. Fleeting moments that cannot last. The violins weep, the odeos sigh, a song of sorrow, a lullaby.
Spin, shadows spin in the waltz of despair. Fade, shadows fade, dissolve in the air. Where are you now? Where do you go? In the waltz of vanishing shadows.
Curtains of mist, a masquerade unseen. Laughter that lingers, a memory's keen. Ghostly hands reach, then disappear. Whispers of love